How y'all doing?
Oh, good, thank you.
Great, great. Very happy to be here in McAllen.
McAllen, Texas, and we're happy to have y'all. I mean, it's such an honor, and when I had the option to look through the panels and then decide I saw Breaking Bad, and I jumped at the opportunity. I mean, Breaking Bad was such a staple. I remember I was in elementary school, and my friend was like, check this out, helpwalterwhite.com, and then I'm like, oh, we need to help this guy out. We need to donate. It's an actual website. Look,
Don't donate. I didn't build that one. I don't know who owns that one.
Yeah, don't do it.
But let's talk a little bit, like, how did each one of y'all's role first come across the table? I know, Raymond, we touched on that a little bit yesterday. You got offered the role 3 times.
And I turned it down.
And you turned it down. Could you tell us a little bit more about, like, how you finally got?
Rick Pagano was a big casting director in Hollywood who cast me in Blood In, Blood Out and a bunch of other movies. And we did a lot of theater together. And Rick's partner, Sharon Bialy, was casting Breaking Bad. And they couldn't find anyone who could capture, what they wanted from the character. And then Rick said, oh, I know who can do it. And then Rick called me. He said, hey, will you read the script? I read it. He goes, what did you think? I go, the writing's great. I go, yeah. He goes, can you do it? I go, yeah. He goes, will you do it? I said, no. I was working on the television show The Closer at the time. So I'm already shooting like 12 hours a day all week. And what happened was, Vince called me. He said, what did you think? I go, well, yeah, I like the writing. He goes, how can we possibly get you on the show? I said, I can't go work somewhere else. I work every day. So he said, what if we do it on the weekend? And I said, oh, great. Now I'm working 7 days, 12, 14 hours a day, 2 different characters, 2 different locations. It sounds impossible. I said, no. I go, that sounds really difficult. And then Vince was persistent. He called me back. He said, what do you need to do it? So I said, I said, you can't change anything I do. And I said, you have to shoot it on the weekend, and you have to pay me more than what you offered. And then there was a long pause, and then Vince said, okay. And then I went, oh, man. Because then I'm thinking, now I got to do all the work. And then I'm not kidding you. I never walked around without a script in my hand for the whole time I did the show. Because I had to, when you're doing a TV show, you're shooting one episode, you're studying for the next one, because right when you finish, you start the next one, and now you're doing another job. So I've always had a script, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it. And then I show up in Albuquerque, and Vince goes, hi. I go, hey, whatever. And he goes, do you know what you're going to do? And I said, no. And he goes, yeah, right. And then we walked on the set, and I immediately told the crew, I said, listen, I want to address the crew. I said, no rehearsal. We're just going to block it and shoot it. And Vince says, are you kidding? And I said, no, because, you need rehearsal. Yeah. And I said, I can't rehearse what I'm going to do. I go, it's too much. So he said, okay. So then that's how I ended up doing the show. I would just walk in, and then Aaron and Brian had no idea what I was gonna do ever, in any take. They were just oh my God. So, and then Vince goes, oh my God, you guys look so scared. The acting is great. They go, we're not acting.
This man terrifies me.
No, we're scared.
And RJ, what about yourself? How did the role first come across to you?
Well, I only said yes. I auditioned 5 times over 6 months. I was the last cast member of the family, and when I got cast, they were already filming the pilot episode, and so I auditioned 5 times over 6 months. See this guy? No, but I was around.
But you got it.
But I got it.
You got it.
Apparently, I did that thing. I was around 13 years old, and the description was dark hair, big eyebrows, and mild cerebral palsy. And I'm like, that's me. I got all that things. And I auditioned 4 times in Los Angeles. I was living in LA at the time, and I went in for my last audition with Sharon, and they're like, okay, we're going to fly you to New Mexico now. First thing in the morning at 6 a.m., you're going to go to New Mexico and do a test screening with Brian and Anna and Vince. And I flew in that morning at 6 a.m. I auditioned for them around like 8:30. I went back to my room. I had a 2 o'clock flight. Vince calls me and goes, "Hey, RJ, pack your bags and head back. Head back and pack your bags because we need you back here. We're already filming. You got the job." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." I was asleep. And so literally I flew back to LA that same day, packed my bags. I flew back the next day, and I started filming that day. And, you know, the writing, the set, that was my very first speaking role ever. I had done extra work, and I recommend to anyone that's in the audience that wants to learn or wants to try acting, extra work is a great way to learn it. I was on shows like Hannah Montana, Everybody Hates Chris, Weeds, Seventh Heaven, and about, oh, thank y'all. It was an extra role, guys. It was an extra role. They fed me though, but it really changed my life. And you know, the team of people. We had a cast and crew of over 500 people, and it was, you know, like Raymond and just all top-notch people that cared about the project. I guess he cared. He cared somewhat.
No, it was a great set. It was a very professional set. You walked on there. It was all about the work.
Yeah.
You know, everybody showed up. Everybody was ready to go. So in that sense, like I love that as an actor because you don't always get that. You know, and this was a great place to go work.
And y'all were mentioning like the sets. Could you? I know you touched on it a little, Raymond, like on your first couple of days. But as it went on, like how did you feel yourself growing or adapting, and maybe even changing the character as time went on?
No, I didn't. I don't work. I don't work like that. I never know what I'm gonna do until I'm on the set. Like I never say a line out loud until I shoot. So I do all my analysis, I build the character, I do all my work, physically what I want it to look like. I know every beat in the scene, I know the entire script, I know all your lines, I know all my lines.
Makes one of us.
So yeah, but I don't actually say anything until we're standing and they say action. So that's why when Vince goes, "Do you know what you're gonna do?" And I go, "No." And he's like, "Yeah, right." So and then you do all the work and you trust that it's there, and then this is how it came out. Yeah, and then doing Tuco was really difficult because it's pitched at such a high energy level. Even when I'm not saying anything, the energy like reverberates off the character. So, you know, to do that, it's exhausting. You know, you got to understand when you're shooting a TV show, you're like 12, 14 hours. And because I'm doing it on Saturday and Sunday, they're doing all my scenes. So I'm working all day. I'm usually out in the desert in 100 and something degree heat.
Junkyard.
Yeah, and it was, and it's very physical. It was very physical. You know,
the one running joke though on set was after he did the tight, every single shot was, "Hey, we want it tight." Yeah. And like and that was literally until the end of the show. It was amazing.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff that's not scripted that I would do, like when I put the cigarette out on my tongue. Like that's not in the script. Like I just found that in the moment. You know, there was another one they wouldn't even show. Because there was a beetle crawling on the ground, and I picked it up, and I was going to eat it. And Vince, they go, "Cut." They go, "Put the beetle down." I go, "Why?" They go, you can't eat the beetle. I go, "Why?" And they said, "Because it's an animal.
It's a living creature. You can't harm living animals on
because they have
camera.
that disclaimer at the end, like no living creature was harmed.
Except that one beetle.
Yeah, except that one. Yeah, I was going to totally eat it in the scene.
And no alcohol either. So, like, most people, you know, in shows and movies, it varies depending on the set. But anytime you see someone drinking on set, usually it's fake. 9 times out of 10.
And I was snorting vitamin B.
And RJ, what about yourself? Like, I know you mentioned you started when you were 13.
Yes, sir.
Like, you were in your teens. You were still developing as an individual. How was that experience for you and growing up in the show, pretty much?
Just reminded me of home, man. You know, just with a little more meth, I guess. No, I loved it. It changed my life for the better. It gave me so many opportunities. It opened so many doors for me and my advocacy. And, you know, at the time when it came to performers with disabilities, you know, there were a handful of them. And there hadn't been a character like Walt Jr. that had a disability, but the story wasn't about that. It was about just him being a kid And I really thought that was amazing that Vince had the insight and understanding to create these types of characters that were just real people. And that's why I think Breaking Bad stood out, is that these characters, were fictional characters, but they had their own living souls. They had their own physicalities and their own minds, and the writing was just so top-notch that when we were put into these environments, it just only grew further than we could have even imagined.
And I know a lot of people, especially when it comes to like the explosiveness that happens after the show. What was y'all's initial sentiment like in regards to like, will this reach a wide audience? Will this cast that big of a net that it did? Was that going through y'all's head at all when y'all like first were on set?
Well, like when I got cast on it, I was on the last 2 episodes of the first season and the first 2 of the second. It didn't even have a big audience. No. I think they had less than 1 million viewers. And I was doing the closer, and we had over like 12 million every week. So, and the show had just started to air.
It was hard.
It was
really
barely
hard.
surviving.
Literally barely surviving. Every end of the season, the show was canceled pretty much. They told us, expect not to come back. Keep in mind, this is 2007, 2008. Like the housing crisis, like people were not so much like caught up in television, and a show with 1 million views was not good at the time. But Vince and Sony and the team really believed in this project and kept pushing to keep it going. And Charlie Collier at the time, who was the president of AMC, really believed in Breaking Bad. And when we were critically acclaimed. And you would think that would be enough, right? But we were also one of the #1 most pirated shows out there. So we weren't getting the numbers. We were really popular in Eastern Europe. but it just wasn't meeting the needs. But our team that produced it just believed in it so much and fought to keep every season going. Because literally they'd be like, RJ, expect this to be it. And I feel like that's what made us every season be our best, is that we're ending this season as a closer. If this show ended this day, we could still be happy with it. And I was very grateful to see how the show ended in a way that really captured real life, not some, we're going to extend it a few more seasons, or we're going to do this with it and keep it going for the next 10 years. That we had a beginning, middle, and end, and that's so special for a series.
No, definitely, because I know that especially when it comes to like these criminal, like really personal shows, like for example, The Sopranos, like really gave way to shows like this really taking off. Like the protagonist that is super like morally and ethically wrong, but he's doing it for the right reasons for family. And then Breaking Bad comes along and gives you just this insight to like this crazy like world and a totally different environment. We're like on the opposite side of the country, and we have such an insight into like this the different culture that is like behind it, and the introduction of like characters, like for example like Walter Jr. And what is y'all's perspective on the show's, I guess, outreach now? Because we talked about how, like, at the beginning, we really didn't know if it was going to keep going. But now, when you witness, like, the people in this room, like I myself, I watched it, like, a couple years ago, but it came out a while ago. Like, what is y'all's thoughts on the outreach and audience now?
I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that there's that we have fans like yourselves that are here supporting the show, and that we have new fans who just started watching Breaking Bad in the last year. It's still growing. And, Raymond has many movies that are going to live on much longer than all of us. And this show will always carry on, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, you see next generation of children, young adults discovering it. My neighbor's like 12. He didn't realize I was on Breaking Bad. Now he's scared of me. Like, I used to play basketball with him in the street. Now he sees me, he he gets scared. He goes, yeah, he just started watching Breaking Bad. I go, awesome. I still let him win, though.
No, you don't.
Yeah, he's a little kid. He's like really cute.
I just imagine you dunking on this dude.
No.
See that dunk? Tight,
In your face, bitch.
No, I relate to the sentiment. I went up to you yesterday. I was like, I need to touch base with him, make sure everything's all right. But your in-person demeanor, it's so much calmer, so much more enlightened than Tuco could ever hope to be unless he was on something, right? But how did you and RJ, how did y'all get into your character? Just for example, like Raymond, it was so different from how you actually are.
Yeah, I had to do so much research because I've never had a drink in my life. I don't do drugs, I have no idea. So I had to do all this research, and I had to figure out how physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, mentally meth affects you. So I read a lot of firsthand accounts from meth addicts, and then you had to heighten it because it's a super meth. It's a strain of meth that doesn't exist. So Tuco was like a bit of a superhero. So that's how I kind of approached it, like he was invincible. Like in anything, like what he said, what he thought, anything. Like, you were a little bitch. They're laughing. And then I would just like break you.
He would. He definitely would.
Yeah, so that was the energy you had to like try to create, man. You get exhausted like living in that space all day.
I just ate breakfast. That was how I started. I just sat down and ate some breakfast. I was like, okay, all right, guys, I'm going home. Thanks for the meal.
There was a lot of eating involved. Like when I look back on the show, like food had such a big part of it. Nothing like The Sopranos. They were eating all the time in The Sopranos. No, but like the food and like sharing that family time at the table. Could you maybe RJ share a little more like of your experiences in regards to like sharing that father-son relationship with Bryan Cranston and just like that family dynamic?
Like the whole set from the cast to the crew was very much a family. Working with Anna and Bryan in the mornings, and so like kind of our day would be, at 6 a.m. See, he's talking about 14 hours. We were more like 16 hours because we worked during the week. But we would start our mornings, and the breakfast table, I think, was so unique to the series because that was the only time chaos wasn't happening. That was the only time where like there was calmness in the family. And so, we really would joke around, and Bryan and Anna both have theater backgrounds and musical backgrounds and many years more experience than I did as a young adult on set. And they would just sing and hear stories, and we would just cut up. It was very much like a family breakfast, and with lines that we would have to say. But it really, I think that was the most peaceful times, even in my real life, were those breakfast days with Bryan and Anna and the birthday scenes and these, stories, because Bryan has had a work history of I'm not going to out him on his age, but let's just say a couple of decades of work, and hearing that past and listening to these stories, and there was advice, and just think of it like your family. Think of it like you were just home today with your brothers and sisters and mom and dad sitting at the breakfast table eating bacon and scrambled eggs and toast and cereal, and it really was a trick to learn how to eat for set, because you can't just go eat every plate. So you had to learn and memorize kind of the bites you took and how you cut your stuff and how you set your forks and knives and plates. And it was a great opportunity when it comes to learning. I recommend to anyone, if you have a job or you're in a position and you want to elevate that job, learn every day. Learn from your coworkers. Learn from your team. Listen and do your best to understand. And if you can find that calmness and patience in your job, it will only amplify you even more to learn more and to grow more and to raise you into that position that you want to become. And that's really what they did. And it was a very big family dynamic.
No, and it shows, like, the show, like, and its reach now really just speaks for itself. I think people are just drawn to that raw, like, energy that people are drawn to that like passion for the project, and if the people doing it themselves love it, then it goes without question
really
that the
does.
people watching will love it.
I really wanted to work with this man and Aaron Paul. I actually never worked with any of the bad guys. I worked with Bob Odenkirk once, and I worked with Giancarlo Esposito twice, very briefly. But I really was isolated in my character as far as like interaction with the bad guys. But I always was like, Vince, am I gonna have a bad guy interaction this season? And he's like, no, RJ, no. We're gonna keep you away from the bad guys, because anytime you ran into someone like Tuco or someone like Gus, they usually were killing people. So they kept me alive.
Here's another plate of scrambled eggs, RJ. I'm going to turn it over to the audience, because I'm sure we have some questions out here. Do we have any questions? Hands up. Right here. Loud and proud, brother. What's your name?
My name is JJ.
Nice to meet you.
What's your question, man?
Okay. First of all, have you seen South Park?
Yeah. South Park? You ever watch South Park?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Is this thing on? Okay. So there are two characters in South Park who have cerebral palsy.
Jimmy and Timmy.
Yeah, and I was like, are you ever offended by the fact that a man who doesn't have a disability basically played two characters with a disability? Has that ever like offended you?
No, I'm not offended by it.
No, because
No, I know. No, not really. I think as far as when it comes to like content that is edgy, based in comedy, I do think it's important to use humor to humanize people. There's a lot of people in this world. They say around 15 to 25% of the world's population has a disability. But the lack of exposure to people with disabilities, and I think any exposure, be it good, positive exposure or negative exposure, is good, because it raises the questions. It starts the conversations. And I think when you have, I'm very grateful for my portrayal of Walter Jr. and the accuracy of what Vince wrote. And my character is actually based on a real person who had CP that Vince knew in college. But I think when it comes to like characters like Jimmy and Timmy from South Park and that kind of sitcom, that kind of dark comedy, I think it helps bridge the gap, because as it ages, right, as we've seen in time, things don't age well anymore in television and media. Some things are a little like, whoa. That's a lot. That's a little racist, or that's a little like whatever. I think it helps set the tone for the future of like, okay, we know what we're not going to do. We don't want bad examples, but sometimes having a bad example is a great stepping stone to be like, okay, we have to do better. If everything was always perfect all the time, why would we need to fix anything, right? But that's not the reality of life. And I think when you have characters that push the edge, be it positive or negative, I think it helps set a tone for the future to grow past, and a future to create a stable foundation of that.
Very well
I
put.
don't really get offended too often. So
Very, very well put. We have another question right here, up in the front, in the red, right here. Question for Raymond. Name and question, sir, loud and proud.
My name is John. For Raymond, how did you like your time in Aliens?
Aliens? Yeah, that was fun. We shot that movie at 20th Century Fox on 3 sound stages. And the director was Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He's a French director who did Delicatessen. And, it's very creative. And the whole cast was great. Ron Perlman, Sigourney Weaver, the little French guy that was in the, I can't remember his name, but me and him used to play soccer on the basketball stage all the time. It was America versus France. And I used to knock him down. He used to get mad. He used to go, this is not football. And I'm like, fuck France. Yeah, America, bitch. So, but it was a very fun shoot. It was a long shoot, and there was a lot of special effects. And the first 6 weeks we were underwater because we do the whole scene where we swim through a kitchen and the aliens chasing us. That was 6 weeks underwater. Yeah, that was crazy. But it was a good shoot. It was a good experience, and it's great to be part of a movie like Aliens because there's not a lot of actors that were actually in that franchise. You know, it's Mexican in space.
I loved it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Any other question? We have one here in the middle. The link. There he is. There she is. Microphone coming in hot. All right, loud and proud. Name and question.
Hi, I'm Giselle. I was one of the people that started watching Breaking Bad like shamelessly only like a year ago, but I fell in love with it. I told my dad, "You have to take me to the New Mexico. We have to go watch over there." But I want to ask both of you, but it's a little bit more so for Raymond. What was it like working on Breaking Bad and then getting the call to come back to Better Call Saul?
Oh, that was odd because I go, I'm dead. And they go, oh, I want you to come back. It takes place 6 years before. And I go, oh, okay, I get it. To revisit the character was great because at that point, Tuco wasn't doing meth. And then I had the relationship with my grandmother. So I really liked that. And this is a true story. This was really difficult. The woman who played my grandmother had Alzheimer's. So no one said anything when we went to shoot. And she was kind of like in a bad way because she would turn to me every 5 seconds and say, "Who are you?" And I would say, "I'm your grandson." She says, "Oh, nice to meet you." Like 5 seconds later, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm your grandson." She's like, "Nice to meet you." And I said, "Again?" And she was like, and the poor woman, she was shooting the scenes and she would leave the set saying, "I have to go film." And they're like, "No, we're filming now. This is what we're doing. We're filming." She said, No, I have to go film." And then, so they would make her stand there and they would give her the line. They would say this. And she would say the line. She would go, "Okay, I have to go now because I have to go film." And they go, No, come back. And then, so it was really difficult, but you can't tell when you watch it. And like I did all of my scenes when the camera's on me. I did it with the script supervisor because I felt bad because the woman was having a hard time, but her family hadn't really said anything that she was in a bad way with the Alzheimer's. And then she also played Al Pacino's mom in Scarface, so it's the same actress, and she was great. And if you watch it, she's great in the scenes, and you can see her struggling in that when me and her are talking. But there's a lot going on there. But yeah, it was kind of cool, like to go back and revisit the character. But again, it's a difficult character to try to pull off. Thank you.
I was a child, so I wasn't involved.
Awesome question. Do we have any others? Right here in the center. Where's the mic?
The Marvel T-shirt.
Awesome. Name and question.
Hello, my name's Heaven. I was wondering if there are any movies or shows that you guys wish you could have worked in.
That we wish they could have worked in?
Aliens.
Yeah, I don't really have any. I mean, there's those movies that I like to watch, and like I would love to have been in Grapes of Wrath with Henry Fonda, the Jode family, but there weren't any. And the Mexicans were picking oranges, but I didn't see one Mexican out there. Like, what the hell? I could have been in that movie. Grapes of Wrath, bitch.
RJ, yourself?
Oh, wow.
Besides aliens.
Oh, man. See, that's a hard one. Any movie with Raymond, I would love to be in a movie with Raymond.
Training Day.
It's Training Day. Actually, man, I would love... Training Day is one of my favorite movies. And, like, his scene in Training Day around the kitchen table is something I quote. Even before we knew each other, it was one of those scenes that always stuck with me when they drag him into the bathtub with the shotgun.
That's a 12-page scene. Most scenes are like 2-3 pages. Yeah. That scene is the longest scene in the movie, and it was like an intense scene to do. It took us 12 days to shoot it, and it's raining in the film. You see how it's wet? Yeah. So we shot it over 6 weeks. So when it started raining, we would shoot like for 2 days in the house. Then it would clear up. They would go shoot outside. Then they go, okay, it's raining again. Then we'd shoot more of the scene. But it took 12 days to shoot that scene.
Man,
That's crazy.
When the dude's like, I want to see your gun. He's like, you have a gun? He's like, no, I want to see your gun. And I was like, oh, man, this is going to get so bad. Like
That scene's awesome in the movie.
It's probably one of the best scenes, like, ever made in television history.
Yeah.
When Denzel just leaves that dude to the wolves. Man.
Yeah, that's the whole gist of the scene.
Anyone seen Training Day? Everyone should be like, yeah. If you haven't, I highly recommend Training Day. It's one of the best movies in my opinion when it comes to a LA film and to a gangster film, and like it really, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend.
Add that to the top of your list, ladies and gentlemen. Training Day. Do we have any other questions? All right, if y'all want to step on over to the mic stand instead, so we can get a line going right here next to the gentleman, Mr. Frank, right here, raising his hand. Say hello to Frank.
Hi, Frank.
How you doing, man? Name and question.
Hi, my name is Rafa. The question's for Raymond. When you started off in your acting career at the very beginning, were there ever any struggles whenever you thought this is not working out, or you were like, I need to keep pushing, I need to keep working on it?
Well, you got to understand that show business in itself is a struggle. It's a hard business to try to break into.
Yeah.
You come into it, like I came from the theater. I did a lot of theater, and I had a lot of like really great training. So, the best advice I got from my acting teacher, he said, you're never going to work. He said, unless you're better than everyone else. He goes, not good, not a little better. He goes, you have to be so good they have to hire you. Because, I had no connections. And so he goes, so I would go in and audition for stuff. And a lot of times they say, we can't hire you. They go, you're too good. They go, you're going to make the other actors look bad. Literally, they would tell you that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then so they go, but we'll find you something else. And like Rick Pagano was a big casting director in Hollywood. He cast 24, Blood In, Blood Out, like tons of movies. And we did a lot of theater together. So he would always bring me in for films. And sometimes he would bring me in to audition. Like one time he said, come in for this TV show. It's a comedy. He goes, they won't hire you. He goes, they're never going to hire you, but I want to show them how funny it could be. So he goes, come in. So I went in, I read, and I'm doing this audition, and Rick is laughing his ass off in the corner, and the producers are looking at me shocked. They're like, and then the actor I'm doing the scene with is like, holy, and then I finished, and I left. They said, thank you. I walk out. Rick goes, that was amazing. He goes, they won't hire you, but that was amazing. Yeah, Hollywood's, it's a weird thing. There's no guarantee. You could be the best actor and never work.
Yeah, you have to have perseverance, right?
Yeah, you have to, it's a little bit of luck. It's a lot of, talent, a lot of like hard work. And then
commitment.
you have to hope that a lot of different things align. I mean, I've been fortunate in that I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different films, television shows, roles. But, that all comes back to I've had like the best training. So, and then whenever I went into audition, I never expected to get hired. I didn't care if you hired me or not, but this is what I'm going to do. So if you want to hire me, good. If not, and I've had people say, can you change this? And I said, no, I'm not willing to do that. You need to find somebody else.
Got it.
So I never cared about getting the job. I just cared about being really good at what I do.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful. I caught the tail end of it, but you got to be a part of no social media. Right. No social media really was a big game changer for the industry, and I miss it. I miss going into an actual audition. Like now it's all online, and you can submit yourself, and it's all through the computer. But when I first started, and probably a big part of your career, it was all you went in and you did it in front of people.
Yeah, you went in with script in hand, and they called you. You went in, you did your audition. It's like coming up on stage, and then they're like, "Okay, thank you." And then
you got to see when you bombed really well. Like
I never bombed.
I bombed once.
How you doing, man? We had a question. Name and question, brother.
Hello, my name is Javier, and this question is for RJ Mitte. How did your time on the show, like, affect your personal and your school lives? Because you were a teenager during the filming of the show. And I can imagine your teachers were very happy with you spending hours on set.
They were not. They were definitely not. So I was living in Texas before I moved to Los Angeles, but my parents split when I was really little, so I went to a school where I was able to be pulled out of classes often. But when I got Breaking Bad, that was probably the most stable my life had ever been, as far as going to one place every year for 6 months out of the year. And I was part of a PACE program and a self-teach program. And so when I got Breaking Bad, I had a private teacher on the set. And from 13 to 18, I kept my teacher, and who was a professor at a university and studied Carrie Maya, who passed away a few years back, who had a master's in education in math, social studies, English, and literature. And so I was very grateful for the education that she has given me. And, you know, when I would work, I would have to do 3 hours of school a day, minimum, in between set. So I would go film my scenes, and I would go to my classroom and study. And I was the only kid really on set. So everyone was much older and out of school. But I went to college for one day. I went in, and I was about 17. I graduated early, because I would just be able. I did school year round. I didn't really have a summer vacation. I was always doing my schoolwork year round, and I went in for one day, and they were like, "Well, you need to quit your job and be a full-time student." And I was like, "Well, my job is Breaking Bad," and they're like, "Yeah, we hate actors, so you should be in education." I was like, "No. Sorry, guys, I'm not quitting my job to go to school." But you know, it's a challenge, and you have to fit the times in and make sure that you did it. But having a great teacher is so important, and I'm very, very lucky that I had a teacher that really carried on, because even after Breaking Bad was over, during the rest of the year, she was still my teacher, and she taught my sister as well. But it's hard. It's hard to have to pick, which I think many people understand the difference between work and school. And, you know, I'm very lucky that I understood how important education was, and being able to read and write properly, and to be able to make sure, you know, I could do my education. And so part of that was me, part of that was my teacher. But I started working from a young age, but you make time for it. You know, if there's something that you really want to do, you make the time to make it happen. And education was definitely something that I really focused a lot of my time on.
Thank you.
No, thank
Awesome,
you.
really well put. Thank you. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. This question is for Ray. So recently you returned as Tuco for a Super Bowl commercial. So I want to know, what was that like, returning for Tuco in a way that you didn't expect to return, which is in a popcorn commercial?
Oh, that was hard, because when I work, I write everything down. I do analysis, and I build the whole character. And I couldn't find my notes for Tuco, because the Super Bowl commercial was like years later. So I was looking through my computer. I couldn't find it. Then I remembered I wrote it all down in a notebook, because I never had time to enter it into my computer, because I was always working. So I found a notebook, and I was able to, like, you know, remember how I built the character, and then put it back together. And then I remembered exactly how much I weighed, what I looked like. So I had to, like, rebuild all that, and then you know, then I was able to, like, recreate it. And then I killed it in the commercial. Thank you.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jaime. I was wondering.
Wait, popcorners taste good too.
Yeah?
No,
Yeah, they're really good.
I'll give it a shot. What was it like to work with Defoe and Harrison Ford?
Oh, doing Clear and Present Danger. I love the book. I'm an avid reader. I read all the time. So I read a lot of Tom Clancy, and I had read the book. And when they were auditioning for the movie, they wouldn't even give me an audition, because the casting director was this big casting director. She didn't want me to come in, because there was a lot of times casting directors like I want this guy to get the part. So if I bring him in, this guy's probably not going to get the part. So she didn't want to bring me in. So I couldn't get an audition. My agent called the producers. He went over her head, and they get pissed when you do that. So he goes, I got you an audition, but the casting director's pissed. So I go in. I meet the casting director. She's this little short lady. She goes, are you ready? And I said, yes, ma'am. I do the audition. She goes, oh, my God. She runs, grabs a camera. She goes, do that again. I do the audition. Then the next day, I went to Paramount to read for Philip Noyce, the director. And it was between me and Benjamin Bratt from Blood In, Blood Out. Me and Ben did Blood In, Blood Out together. So it was between me and him for the character. And I love this character because I used the book to build the character. I didn't use the script at all. So I go in. I'm first to read. I meet the director. And Philip doesn't even look at you. He's kind of looking down, eating like sunflower seeds. And he's like, okay, go ahead. So I do the scene. I do one scene. He goes, stop. And he looks at me. He goes, part's yours. From not even getting an audition, and then having to go like fight for it, and then going in, and then getting the role, then shooting it, and it was great. Willem Dafoe was like one of the best actors like to work with. Like he comes from the theater also. Like I loved working with him, our scenes together. And Harrison Ford was a really nice guy, you know. And then when we weren't working, like we would smoke pot out of a Coke can together, you know. Everybody. But it was a great experience. We shot it in Mexico in the jungles, and it takes place for South America, and it was really cool shooting out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I believe we have time for one more question. So Kool-Aid Man, all you.
Oh yeah,
Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Hi, Mr. Cruz.
Hi.
My name is Robert. I have a question for both of you guys. What was it like doing the show Breaking Bad with most of the cast, like Danny Trejo and the main guys?
Well, I never worked with them. I was always alone. I just worked with Brian and Aaron, and then those guys came on later. But yeah, I was like one of the first villains, I guess, if you look at it that way.
The bad guy.
Yeah, I never saw him as a bad guy, just like misunderstood.
He was. I never saw Tuco as a bad guy either. I just thought he was just a businessman,
I wish they would have let me babysit.
Uncle
That would have
Tuco.
been that would have been like the best episode.
Yo,
My stepdad loves that show, Breaking Bad.
Thank you, man. I'd be walking if he babysit me. No, I love that. See, I never worked with the bad guys. I really only stayed with the family, Brian, Anna, Betsy, Dean. And occasionally, I only worked with Bob one time, and Giancarlo Esposito, I worked with him twice. But literally, those characters were more like just like, oh, hey, yeah. It was like Gus comes in one scene, and he just stares at it. He's pretty much like, I hope you like your chicken. And it was like, who is it? But no, it was very tight-knit. All the bad guys were Walter White versus Heisenberg. Those were two distinct characters. So I pretty much only worked with Walter White, and he only worked with Heisenberg. And so there was a big divide between who Brian's character was at home to who he was actually out in the world. And that was, I think, a really nice. I don't think that was intentional, but I definitely think it was a very real thing.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Thank you so much for your question. We appreciate it. But one more question just for y'all. Is there any words that you'd like to share with old fans, with new fans in regards to the show, or maybe some words that you think your character would like to share to the fans?
Oh, we just like to say thank you for supporting the show and being appreciative of really good writing and good storytelling. Without the audience, the show wouldn't exist. If people didn't find it, people found Breaking Bad, and they started binge watching it, and that's what created the success of the show. And because us as actors, a lot of times you'll do a part, but you don't know if anyone's ever going to see it.
I hope not for some of mine.
But just a big thank you to the fans for supporting the show.
we couldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today and talking to you and telling these amazing stories without your support. And you know, I love the Valley. The Valley's my home. I live in Brownsville, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be able to come to places like this and share my art with you. And I really appreciate everyone that's here today. And, you know, Raymond and our cast and crew, we loved what we were doing. We knew it was special. We knew it was something amazing, but we just did not know how it would go on and how the echo would happen. And, you know, meeting new fans, seeing old fans, thank you. Thank you all so much for your impact in the show, because you made Breaking Bad happen. And without you, it wouldn't exist.